Salve to Discipuli, this is Mickey Strabuddy, and this is going to be a fairly intensive review on how to identify the function of words in a sentence and translate them with a focus on dependent clauses. We're going to use the story taberna from stage 18 because there are several dependent clauses in this story. So go ahead and grab your sheet of paper and take some notes. First of all, what are dependent clauses? The name kind of explains what it is. It's a clause that's dependent. It can't stand alone. They are dependent on the rest of the sentence. Some people like to call them subordinate clauses because they are under's the sub, the order, you see order there, of the main clause. What begins a dependent clause? How do you know that you're entering a dependent clause? Sometimes they'll start with adverbs, such as when. When we were little, after we arrived at the theater, before we left. So these are all dependent clauses. They are relying on, or they are subordinate to, they are dependent upon the main part of the sentence. They leave you looking for more. They can start with quad, because he was late, because she was talented, because the test was fun. Again, these are all begging for something else. These are dependent. These are not complete sentences. They can't stand on their own. And then finally, we have relative pronouns. In Latin, the relative pronoun almost always starts with the relative clause almost always starts with the relative pronoun and ends with the verb. The only time it does not start with the relative pronoun is if that relative pronoun is part of a prep phrase. For example, here, in which he worked. So if it said something about blah, 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 a store in which he worked. Okay, so go ahead and print the story taberna, or you can copy down the sentences, though this is going to take a while. So I highly recommend that you get a hold of a copy of the story. Any adjectives that you see, single underline them and draw arrows to their antecedents. Possessives should be double underlined to draw arrows to their antecedents. Put parentheses around your prep phrases. They're usually 2 to 3 words. Occasionally there might be 4 in there, but it's usually just 2 or 3. Put these types of brackets around your dependent clauses and try to make them distinctly clear from your prep phrases. They give you a nice separating visual. And then label everything else left over. Label all of your subjects, your subject complements, direct objects, indirect objects, adverbs, and verbs. If you want to write out your translation, it's best to do it on the back of the sheet. That way you can practice translating by just using your markings instead of reading your written out English translation. All right, first let's do lines 1 through 5. So go ahead and pause the video, take the time to do your markings. Okay, here we go. So postquam means after. And it's starting a dependent clause, so I have my brackets here. It ends with my verb. We also have a preposition, ad urbem, embedded in our dependent clause. This is an adverb. We don't really need to mark it if you don't want to. Ad venimus is a verb. Ego is a personal pronoun. It's the nominative form of the personal pronoun, so that's our subject. Clementi is dative, so it's our indirect object. Du is an adverb. Tabernam is accusative. And quiribam is our verb. Notice our verb is first person singular, and then bam, it matches our subject. So the first sentence reads, after we arrived at the city, I was searching for a store for Clemens for a long time. All right, next sentence, tandem is an adverb. Barbilus is our subject. We've got qui, a relative pronoun, so we're going to use our bracket to start our relative clause. And it ends with a verb, so we put our closing bracket here. Now let's see what's inside. Qui is nominative, it's our subject. And remember, the antecedent of a relative pronoun will always be the same in number and gender. This is masculine singular. So is barbilus, so that's its antecedent. Multa is an adjective, modifying idificia. This is neuter, so this is our direct object. This is not a first declension nominative singular, because qui has to be nominative. Mihi is our indirect object, it's dative. Tabernum is accusative. Optimum matches tabernum. It's modifying it. And obtulit is our verb. So finally, Barbilus, who used to own many buildings, showed me the best store. You could also say, finally, Barbilus, who used to own many buildings, showed the best store to me. All right, hike. We haven't officially learned this yet, but the book puts them in all the time. It's kind of like an adjective, and this is the nominative singular feminine form, so it's modifying taberna. Taberna, as we know, is a first declension noun, so that A there means it's the subject. S18 is genitive, and it just makes sense for it to be modifying templum, so this whole thing right here is our prep phrase. Erat is a verb. I put an L in front of it because it's a linking verb. All right, so this store was near the temple of Isis. All right, the next one's a little complicated. Right off the bat, we've got a preposition. Hoc is ablative singular. It's related to this up here, so it just means this. Hoc is modifying parte. That's also ablative singular. Urbis is genitive. What could it be possessing? In this part of the city just makes sense. The city's street, I mean, I suppose that could make sense, but I think once you got into translating the sentence, you would realize it makes more sense to be going with parte. Via is first declension, so it has to be the subject. We've got a linking verb here. Then we have another in, the beginning of a prep phrase. In qua. Qua is a relative pronoun. So not only is this a prep phrase, it's also the beginning of a relative clause. So let's put a bracket here as well. And remember, relative clauses always end in a verb. So we go to our verb and we put our closing bracket for the end of our relative clause there. Okay, so omnes, this is an adjective. What is it modifying? So this es here, it could be nominative or accusative plural. We've got a nice nominative plural here for it to be modifying. So we're going to draw the arrow over there and mark that as the subject. Vitrum is, it means glass. This is a neuter noun. So in form, this could be nominative or accusative, but as we just stated, we already have a nominative, forces this into the direct object. All right, let's go back. So in this part of the city is a street in which all the shopkeepers sell glass. All right, let's do 5 through 8. This was the last word of the previous slide, so I'm just going to skip that. Facula is an adverb. Est is a linking verb. Illis. This is kind of like hic, haec, hoc, but it's a slightly different version. This means that or those. Just think of it as an adjective for now. This is, though, matches this is. These are both dative plural, so we can draw an arrow over there. Because this is dative, it's our indirect object. Merchem, this is accusative, so it's our direct object. This is an infinitive, to sell. It's a complementary infinitive. Then we've got quad. Now this could be a relative pronoun. It could be because. Let's keep going to find out. Actually, we don't need to keep going to find out. If it were a relative pronoun, it would have to have an antecedent. And antecedents, relative pronouns always match their antecedent in number and gender. As a relative pronoun, this would be neuter singular. Is there anything back here that's neuter singular for it to be referring back to? The answer is no. That's how we know that it's because. But we're still launching into a dependent clause with because. So we'll put our bracket there and scroll down till we get a verb, and here's our closing bracket. Now vitrum, as I said on the previous slide, is neuter. So this here could be nominative, it could be accusative. We've got a couple of adjectives here that are also ending in so they are modifying vitrum. And then we have a linking verb. Well, linking verbs don't tend to have direct objects. They just have subjects and descriptors. They're just linking things together that are the same. So this is definitely not a direct object. This is your subject. All right, let's go back and translate this. It is easy for those shopkeepers to sell merchandise because Alexandrian glass is very famous. All right, next sentence. Taberna, first declension noun, nice and easy. That's our subject. Quam, that's a relative pronoun. So let's do our bracket. And remember, relative clauses always end with a verb, so we keep scrolling until we get to a verb, and then we do our closing bracket. Let's go back to quam. Okay, so quam is our direct object. That's feminine, singular. What's its antecedent? Taberna. Notice we have a direct object as the relative pronoun, and it's referring back to a subject. Because remember, case doesn't matter. A relative pronoun could be doing something completely different in its clause than its antecedent is. All that matters is that they're the same number and gender. All right, barbillis, nice and easy second declension, has to be the subject. Mihi, that is it's a pronoun, and it's dative, so that's our indirect object, and then there's our verb. All right, optimum, adjective, nice, modifies this right here, situm. Situm is a direct object. Habebat's the verb. Optimum is modifying lucrum. Nice and easy. They even look the same. We've got another direct object here. Let's back up just a tiny bit. All right, so both lucrum and situm, these are neuter nouns. In form, these could be subject or direct object. But we already have a definite subject in this sentence. Up here, taberna forces these two into their other options as the direct object. All right, so what does this sentence say? The shop which Barbilus was offering to me had the best place, the best profit. All right, barbillis, nice and easy second declension, nominative singular, that's our subject, tamen is an adverb, and dubitabat's the verb. So, however, barbillis was doubtful. Okay, here we go. Nice long one. Go ahead and pause the video and mark it up. Sunt is our linking verb. Operai is an adjective. It's multi is an adjective modifying operai. Operai is a first declension noun. It makes sense for it to be nominative plural because it's the verb is plural. Inquit's a verb. And then over here we've got a preposition introducing a prep phrase. So illa, this is that adjective I was telling you about earlier. At least think of it as an adjective for now. This is ablative singular and feminine. It's modifying this ablative singular feminine. And then we've got a possessive here, urbis, in that part of the city. It's that whole thing together. It's a 4-word prep phrase. So there are many thugs, he said, in that part of the city. Tabernarii, this is a second declension noun. That accented I can be a couple of different things. When we look at the verb, we see that it's plural. So this is most likely our plural subject. Operas, as. That's a nice first declension noun. That as is accusative plural. And then we've got quad here. How do you know if quad is because or a relative pronoun? Well, as a relative pronoun, it would be neuter singular. Is there anything outside of the relative clause that's neuter? Well, we've got timent, we've got operos, and we've got tabernari. No neuters, nothing it could be referring to. So this must be because. And then we scroll along and we close off the dependent clause right here at the verb. Pecuniam, nice first declension noun, definitely accusative. Extorquent, nice NT there, that's our verb. Et is a connector. Whim, this is kind of a weird noun. It is accusative singular. You've got a vowel and you've got an M. Inferent, again, a nice verb. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. The shopkeepers fear the thugs